The drought in Burkina Faso had entered its third relentless year. Villages lay abandoned, their people flocking to the cities in desperation. Water protests had escalated beyond civil unrest. They were now sparking a political crisis. President Ibrahim Traoré's government stood on the brink. In shadowy corridors of Paris and Washington, French and American intelligence were preparing an operation codenamed Water Coup, a plan to topple Traoré's regime. But no one knew about the Blue Belt. It was Traoré's secret hope, a classified water reclamation project quietly developed by a team of engineers trained in China. Thousands had gathered in Ouagadougou's central square, waving empty jerry cans like weapons, chanting, "We want water." Rain hadn't fallen properly in 3 years. Burkina Faso's lakes were cracked basins of mud. Its rivers, once lifelines, were now dry scars across the land. From the window of the presidential palace, President Traoré stood motionless, watching the sea of protest. His face was stone. Inside, his mind raced. Defense Minister Ouedraogo stood at his side, report in hand. "Mr. President," he said, voice grave, "the situation deteriorates by the hour. 5 northern cities have been fully evacuated. People are flooding the capital or massing at the Mali border." "And Mali?" Traoré asked, not taking his eyes off the square. "They're better off. They have the Niger River, but they've closed their borders. No refugees allowed." Traoré nodded slowly, his lips tightened. Ouedraogo hesitated. "Aqua Global has raised prices again. A liter of clean water now costs more than gasoline, and they're only selling in foreign currency." Traoré's voice was quiet but sharp with fury. "They're not selling water! They're buying our sovereignty, one drop at a time." Communication Minister Ouedraogo burst in, visibly tense. "Mr. President, the international media are everywhere. CNN, BBC, France 24, all calling this a government failure, a looming humanitarian collapse. Foreign opposition statements are also circulating," added Intelligence Chief Sankara. Former Foreign Minister Kabore just held a press conference in Paris. He called for international support to overthrow this government. Traoré turned to the map on his desk. The blue rivers were gone. Only dry brown lines remained. "They expect us to let our people die of thirst," he said coldly, "then borrow money to buy water from them, the same water they stole from us in the first place." He looked up. "Sudan, Egypt, Libya, now us. This is not coincidence. It's strategy." Just then, his assistant entered. "Mr. President, Dr. Zeta is here. He says it's urgent. He mentioned Blue Belt." The room fell silent. Blue Belt was classified at the highest level. Fewer than 6 people even knew it existed. "Let him in," said Traoré. A moment later, a man in his 30s entered, eyes sharp with determination, a worn leather bag slung over his shoulder. "Mr. President," Dr. Zeta said, "when I first presented this project to you 2 years ago, it was theory, but now we have results." He handed over a tablet. On screen, a rotating 3D geological model. "Beneath the Sahara," he explained, "around 400 meters down, is an ancient aquifer. It dates back to the last ice age. We estimate it holds 500 billion cubic meters of fresh water." Traoré stared at the screen, speechless, then whispered, This could supply Burkina Faso for 100 years." Zeta nodded. "Not just us. All of West Africa." That night, deep beneath the presidential palace, inside a signal-proof bunker, Traoré assembled his inner circle. Dr. Zeta, Intelligence Chief Sankara, Defense Minister Ouedraogo, and Economy Minister Diop Zeta laid out maps, geological data, and technical projections. "It's feasible," he said, pointing to a cross-section. "The Chinese built a similar system. The aquifer there was shallower, but the principles are the same. We can tap into this. The water is there." "What's the cost?" asked Diop. $2 billion for Phase 1. "The entire system, 5 to 6 billion. Diop sighed. "We don't have that kind of money. The IMF and World Bank have us in a stranglehold. No new loans. They're tightening the screws." "The Chinese?" Ouedraogo suggested. Sankara shook his head. They'll hesitate. Financing this would provoke France directly, especially with the trade wars still raging. Beijing won't risk that confrontation. Not now. Traoré stared at the illuminated map. His hand hovered over it, over the invisible waters buried deep beneath the sand. A decision loomed. The room fell into silence. And in that silence, something shifted. Not in politics or strategy, but in resolve. The Blue Belt was no longer theory. It was war. The water basin stretched beneath northern Burkina Faso, just below the vast edge of the Sahara Desert. Part of it extended into Malian territory, a massive ancient reservoir shared by fragile nations. "We can't do this alone," President Traoré said, staring at the map. "Not just financially. Politically, it's impossible. Western powers will do everything in their arsenal to stop us." Dr. Zeta looked puzzled, even slightly naive. "But why? This is just water, a basic human need." Traoré smiled bitterly. "My young friend, if Africa controls its own water, the West loses its greatest weapon. Water is no longer just life. It's leverage. It's the new oil. And scarcity is the sharpest blade of this so-called New World Order." Ankara, the intelligence chief, leaned forward. "Then what do we do, Mr. President? The streets are on fire with anger. French agents are fueling the unrest. A coup is only a matter of time." Traoré paused, letting the silence carry weight. Then, with steely resolve, "We proceed. We launch Blue Belt. But not as Burkina Faso alone, as a coalition." "With Mali?" Defense Minister Ouedraogo asked, surprised. "Our relations with them are worse than ever." "No," said Traoré. "We form something new. An alliance. Niger, Chad, Mali, Senegal. Every nation in the Sahel is facing the same threat, water scarcity, and every one of them is tired of bowing to Western control." The room went silent. What Traoré was proposing was no longer a mere engineering initiative. It was the blueprint for a regional revolution. "We move in stages," he continued. "First, we coordinate technical teams, then financial planning, and once there's progress, we bring the heads of state together, quietly, in secret. Until then, we roll out emergency measures, short-term relief, desalination tests, water rationing to give our people hope." They worked through the night, spreading maps and reports across the war room table. The Blue Belt project was no longer theory. It had become survival. Paris, French Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Philippe Dubois, Africa desk chief, leaned over, his desk as his assistant approached. "Director," the assistant said, handing him a tablet. "We intercepted an unusual signal from Ouagadougou last night. A long meeting in the presidential palace's underground chamber. Signal blocker was active. We couldn't get audio. But we identified the attendees." Dubois scanned the list, pausing at a name. "Dr. Adama Zeta," the assistant clarified. "Geologist, water engineer, trained in Shanghai for 5 years, worked on China's Gobi Desert water projects." Dubois' eyes narrowed. "Zeta, is this related to the Nubian aquifer?" "Possibly, sir. Recent research suggests the ancient Sahara Basin stretches into Burkina Faso's northern territories." Dubois didn't hesitate. He picked up the phone. "Get me the foreign minister. Now." 1 hour later, French Foreign Ministry, crisis meeting room. Around the table sat the foreign minister, director of the DGSSE, French External Intelligence, the CEO of Aqua Global, and the Africa Affairs advisor. "If Traoré launches this project," Dubois warned, We are not just losing control over Burkina Faso. We risk losing the entire region. Aqua Global's contracts will collapse. Our new uranium agreements in Mali and Niger will be threatened. We should accelerate Operation Water Coup, said the DGSSE director. We've been waiting for the opposition to unify. That's taking too long. We can't afford to wait. The foreign minister tapped a pen against the table, deep in thought. An overt move risks backlash, he said. China and Russia will frame it as neo-colonial aggression. International opinion could shift against us. But if we don't act now, the Aqua Global CEO interjected, we lose our foothold in the last resource war of the century. Dubois leaned forward. Then we act, but through shadows, pressure, disinformation, economic sabotage, and, if necessary, surgical disruption. The world must believe Traoré failed on his own. The room agreed with a grim nod. In Ouagadougou, water was about survival. In Paris, it was about power. French Foreign Ministry, crisis briefing room, direct intervention, Dubois said coldly. We support former Defense Minister Cabaret, encourage a popular uprising, and most importantly, we deepen the water crisis. Aqua Global CEO, Pierre Renaud, leaned forward. Our company can temporarily reduce water supply under the guise of technical malfunctions. That will intensify the shortages. Perfect. Dubois nodded. The Blue Belt project isn't just an economic challenge. It's a strategic one. If Traoré succeeds, every African nation will follow, and they'll all start turning off the taps controlled by us. The foreign minister raised an eyebrow. What about the Chinese? Are they involved? No direct involvement, said the DGSSE director. But Zeta's ties to Beijing run deep. He studied in China, worked with them on desert water recovery. If the project gains traction, China could provide both funding and tech support. Then Zeta is our priority, Dubois said firmly. We either buy him off or neutralize him. The meeting ended with unanimous agreement. Accelerate Operation Water Coup. That night, French intelligence activated its field assets across Burkina Faso. 2 weeks later, secret military base, 300 kilometers from Ouagadougou. President Traoré stood before a large tactical map of the Sahara's subterranean water basin, surrounded by water engineers and geologists from 5 nations. This basin doesn't belong to one country, he said. Like rivers, it crosses our borders, and so must the solution. Water ignores lines on a map, and so will we. An engineer from Mali raised a concern. Mr. President, the financial burden worries us. Our economies are already fragile. You're absolutely right, Traoré responded. But consider this. As West African nations, we spend nearly $10 billion a year on imported water, mostly from Western corporations. If we reclaim that with Blue Belt, it could pay for itself within 5 years. The room murmured in agreement as the strategy took shape, phase by phase, national surveys, regional collaboration, and financing from non-Western allies, BRICS, the African Development Bank, even private partnerships. By day's end, Traoré addressed the room. Today we take a historic step together. A step to reshape our continent's future. Water is life, and we are reclaiming our life. Just then, Intelligence Chief Sankura rushed into the room. Urgency etched on his face. Mr. President, there's an emergency. Massive protests have erupted in Ouagadougou. Violence has spread across the capital. And there's been an attack on Dr. Zeta's home. Zeta paled. My family? "They're safe," said Sankura quickly. "Our agents intervened, just in time, but the house, they set it on fire." Traoré's eyes hardened. He saw the pattern immediately. Classic destabilization. They're trying to break us. He turned to the delegation. "End the meeting. Everyone returns home via secure routes. Dr. Zeta, you're going to our protected base near the Mali border. You're too valuable to risk. En route to the capital, presidential helicopter." From the air, flames curled up from government buildings. Streets were choked with tear gas, debris, and the roar of clashing crowds. Back at the Presidential Command Center, Defense, Minister Ouedraogo delivered grim news. 2 brigade commanders have defected. Northern garrison troops are advancing toward the city. Western garrison remains loyal. Traoré turned to his personal guard. "Where do we stand?" "All with you, Mr. President," the commander affirmed. "Palace perimeter is secure." Traoré studied the tactical map, hands clenched behind his back. Then he made his decision. "I'm going to address the nation. Prepare a live broadcast." "Sir," Sankura cautioned. "It's risky. You'll reveal your location." "We don't have the luxury of hiding," Traoré said. "The people deserve the truth. They need to know who's really behind this chaos." 1 hour later, national broadcast. The screen flickered to life. Traoré stood tall in his military uniform, eyes steady. "My dear citizens," he began, voice unwavering. "Today, our nation faces a grave test. A group, supported by foreign powers, is attempting to overthrow your legitimate government." He paused, letting the words sink in. "Their goal is not democracy. It is domination. They want to seize control of our water, our land, our future. But I promise you this, they will fail." In homes across Burkina Faso, people leaned in closer to their screens. For the first time in years, a leader was not pleading for help, but standing to fight my fellow citizens. President Traoré began, voice resonant and steady. "Our most precious resource is under attack. Not gold, not oil, but water." He leaned forward, eyes unwavering. "I want to reveal a truth kept from you for too long. Beneath the sands of the Sahara lies a vast underground basin, a reservoir large enough to end the water crisis not only in Burkina Faso, but across West Africa." A map appeared beside him, tracing the enormous aquifer buried under the desert. "This is why we are being targeted. This is why a coup is unfolding at this very moment." He placed a hand on the map. "The Blue Belt Project, our vision, our future, is designed to reach this ancient water source through scientific cooperation with neighboring nations. It will liberate us from dependency on foreign water imports. But there are those who fear this freedom." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "Foreign powers, corporations like Aqua Global, governments that have long profited from our thirst. They are trying to crush this dream before it begins." Across the country, live broadcast, and rising tensions as Traoré's speech echoed through homes, radios, and phones. Troops under General Bamora advanced toward the presidential palace. But something was shifting. Online, a hashtag surged. Blue Belt. In villages and cities alike, people flooded social media. Our water, our future. They fear our unity. Stand with Traoré. Back in the broadcast studio, there are foreign agents within our military ranks, Traoré admitted. But let me be clear. Most of our soldiers are patriots. I call on you now. Do not raise your weapons against your own people. Do not betray your homeland for foreign profit. His voice sharpened. Stand for our future. Stand for Burkina Faso. Stand for the Blue Belt. Outside the palace. Nightfall as soldiers approached. Something unexpected happened. Some lowered their rifles. Others simply stopped moving. And then, crowds. Thousands of civilians surged around the palace, chanting, waving handmade banners. Unity for Blue Belt. Water is ours. We will not be thirsty in silence. Traoré emerged onto the balcony. This is why they fear us, he declared. Because they know the power is no longer in their hands. It's in yours. By dawn, Coup collapses general. Bamora and Colonel Dopp were arrested. The soldiers who followed them either surrendered or melted away. The attempted coup dissolved under the weight of public resistance and internal collapse. Burkina Faso had stood tall and stood together. 3 months later, edge of the Sahara Grand Ceremony unfolded on the desert rim. Leaders and engineers from across West Africa gathered beneath flags of Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal. The platform was draped in blue. Music played. Dancers performed traditional rhythms. And then, President Traoré stepped forward. Today we do more than begin drilling, he said. We begin a new chapter in Africa's fight for sovereignty. Water is life. And today, for the first time, that life is in our own hands. The president of Mali took the podium next. For years they've taken our gold, our oil, our diamonds, and now they want our water. But no more. The Blue Belt is more than an infrastructure. Plan. It is a declaration, a manifesto of freedom. Technical briefing. Dr. Zeta outlined the details. The first borehole would go 400 meters deep. Once the aquifer was reached, a vast system of solar-powered pumps and pipelines would begin construction. In 5 years, the project would transform the region. To mark the start, Traoré pushed the lever of the first drill. Cheers erupted as the machine roared to life, breaking through layers of sand and stone. There was hope again, and pride. After the ceremony, quiet conversation. Standing beside the drill site, Traoré gazed out at the horizon. What do you think, Zeta? Can we really pull this off? Zeta smiled, eyes twinkling. Mr. President, this project is not only technically possible, it has the people's heart. And for the first time in decades, we are not alone. The region is with us. Traoré nodded soberly. The West will react harshly, especially when the water starts flowing. We must be ready, Zeta replied. Not just technically, politically, strategically. The president agreed. Africa's struggle for independence has never been easy, but this time is different. Because now we have 3 weapons they can't take from us. He raised 3 fingers. Knowledge, technology, and unity. 6 months later, breakthrough. At a depth of 412 meters, the drill struck liquid gold. Water. Cheers erupted at the site. Engineers danced. Villagers wept. Lab results were conclusive. Drinkable without treatment. Clear, pure. 10,000 years old, preserved since the last ice age. Dr. Zeta stood over the samples in awe. This water, it's from another era. The minerals are perfectly balanced. It's as if the earth was waiting for us to find it. The first pumps were installed. The water began to rise, and with it, a continent's hope. At first, only a trickle of water rose to the surface. The system was still in its testing phase, and only limited volumes were being pumped. Yet even this modest flow was enough to bring relief to small communities in the region. The project soon drew widespread attention from the international media. Outlets such as National Geographic, the BBC, and Al Jazeera hailed the Blue Belt as Africa's water revolution. Encouraged by these early successes, funding became easier to secure. The African Development Bank pledged a $3 billion credit package. The BRICS New Development Bank contributed another $1 billion for technical infrastructure. Even some European countries began offering indirect support. But not everyone welcomed the project's momentum. France and multinational companies like Aqua Global launched what many described as a silent campaign of obstruction. Delays in the delivery of critical equipment, pressure on global financial institutions, and behind-the-scenes efforts to stoke political instability. Internal tensions in Mali flared. In Burkina Faso, however, the tide was beginning to turn. Water scarcity was easing. The first pipelines finally reached Ouagadougou. For the first time in years, the city's reservoirs began to fill. Long queues at water stations began to disappear. President Traoré, accompanied by Dr. Zeta, visited the capital's new water distribution hub. People lined up to fill containers from tankers carrying clean water. On their faces, not just relief, but a quiet, radiant joy. "This," said Traoré, watching them, "is why we fight, for that expression on their faces." 2 years into the Blue Belt project, the political landscape of West Africa had shifted dramatically. Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, Chad, and Senegal formed a new regional coalition, the Sahara Water Alliance. But the alliance was not only about water, it became a platform for broader integration, economic cooperation, regional security, and technological exchange. At an international water summit, Traoré delivered a keynote address. "We are coming to the end of the age of water wars. Water must no longer be a weapon, a tool of control. It must be recognized as the common heritage of humanity. The Blue Belt Project proves that this vision is possible." In a video conference with other alliance leaders, Traoré outlined Phase 2 of the project. "Once Phase 2 is complete," he said, "we will be producing 10 million cubic meters of water per day, enough to meet the basic needs of every citizen in our region." "And Phase 3? asked the president of Mali. "Phase 3, Traoré replied, "will focus on agriculture. We'll expand irrigation systems and reclaim land along the desert's edge. We have the potential to triple our food production." The president of Niger voiced concern. "I'm worried about recent developments. The coup attempt in Nigeria. Could this be a reaction to our progress?" Traoré nodded. "Undoubtedly, if Nigeria, the largest economy in West Africa, joins the Blue Belt, the regional power balance will be redefined. There will be resistance." The summit concluded with a joint declaration inviting all West African nations to join the Blue Belt. The project was no longer just about water. It had become a blueprint for economic independence and regional sovereignty. By the 5th year, the Blue Belt was operating at full capacity. Water drawn from the aquifer beneath the Sahara now reached all 5 member countries. In large parts of the region, water scarcity was no longer a daily crisis. Traoré returned to the northern pumping station for the 5th anniversary celebrations. Here, enormous pumps were lifting millions of cubic meters of water every day. Dr. Zeta walked him through the latest advances. "Thanks to new nanotechnology, our filters now use 30% less energy," she explained, "and solar power covers 80% of our entire operation." Inside the control room, giant screens tracked every part of the network, each pump, each pipeline, each distribution point. "5 years ago," said Traoré, gazing at the displays, "this was nothing but desert. Now it's one of Africa's greatest engineering achievements." Outside, a new city had grown around the station. Engineers, technicians, workers, and their families had settled here. Schools, clinics, and markets had sprung up. In the heart of the Sahara, a new kind of oasis had been born, a city of progress. Later, at a press conference, Traoré addressed the world media. The Blue Belt has proven that Africa can take control of its own resources. This isn't just about water. It's about oil, gold, cobalt, diamonds, our entire future. We are setting a model for sustainable development across the continent. A journalist asked, "What about your relationship with France and other former colonial powers?" Traoré's reply was measured but firm. "We've turned a new page. Today we speak as equals. The colonial era is over. Even companies like Aqua Global now want to work with us, on fair terms." After the conference, Traoré and Dr. Zeta climbed to the top of the pumping station. Before them, the vast Sahara stretched endlessly. But it no longer symbolized barrenness. It had become a partner, hiding the lifeblood of a continent beneath its sands. "Did you believe we'd make it this far?" Traoré asked. Dr. Zeta smiled. "Technically, yes. Politically, I had my doubts." "So did I," Traoré said softly. "But now I see. The greatest barrier facing a people isn't poverty or geography. It's the belief that they can't rise beyond their limits." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the pumps continued their steady work, channeling life across the heart of Africa. The Blue Belt was no longer just a project. It had become a symbol of resilience, sovereignty, and hope. It solved more than water scarcity. It sparked regional unity, technological innovation, and economic renewal. Ibrahim Traoré would be remembered not just as a leader who brought water to his people, but as the man who began Africa's march toward the true independence. And this, he knew, was only the beginning.